to support in principle this bill and to acknowledge the need for a range of remedial measures and changes driven by the rush to implement this increase to GST. So before going through the substantive matters in the bill and summarising up the discussion during the committee stage debate, may I join the Minister in acknowledging the work of officials, his staff, the Select Committee staff, its chairman, and its staff as well. There has been a great deal of work that's gone into this bill under a very compressed time frame. I should say perhaps that it's not been the easiest of processes. The Minister's acknowledged that it's not been ideal, and I can't blame officials for that, sir, because they, like the rest of us, saw the Prime Minister on television, no doubt, saying that he wouldn't be raising GST, and no doubt they were surprised, as we were, when the government did a U-turn and decided to do it. And that's left Minister Dunn, hitherto known as the Minister for Remedial Measures, to bring a 28-page SOP to the House floor that has not had the benefit of a Select Committee process, let alone the benefit of the normal generic tax policy process. And it would be my prediction, sir, and that of the Labour opposition, that we will be remediating the remedials before the 3-year triennium is out. Mr. Speaker, the debate at the committee stage was a disappointing one from the point of view of the Labour opposition. Rather than engaging on the substance of the issues, government members like the Chief Whip, Mr Tremaine, seemed determined to use it as an opportunity to spread misinformation about the opposition's policy. For example, he alleged in debate that under the previous government we had not reduced government debt as a percentage of GDP. And I asked him which government he was referring to, because the outgoing Labour government reduced gross debt as a percentage of GDP from 35% to 17%, cut it in half, and it reduced net debt, including the assets of the New Zealand Superannuation Fund, to zero, making New Zealand a net creditor nation for the first time in over a century. Quite an achievement, I would have thought. At the same time, in particular, as achieving the world's lowest unemployment and the longest post-war economic expansion. And ask any New Zealander who's waiting for the so-called aggressive recovery, my goodness, how good do those golden days seem now? And then, of course, we've had to endure the misrepresentations from the Minister of Finance, talking about a so-called 8.7% real increase in post-tax income under this government, in which he has conveniently included the benefit of tax cuts brought down by the previous Labour government in its 2008 budget, which he voted against. So when is a policy not a policy? When you vote against the other team's policy and then include it in your own total. And of course, to go further, sir, in his speech at the end of the committee stage, Mr English misrepresented the Labour SOP, which of course doesn't remove all GST from rates, never intended to, but is a small token of recognition, sir, that people who are paying GST on rates should not retrospectively face a higher rates bill during the year of transition, and thereby defers the increase as is appropriate. Sir, it is inevitable and proper that in the debate on a bill that seeks to impose a higher goods and services tax on all New Zealanders, the debate should turn to the substance of why that is happening. And sir, the stark contrast between this government and the opposition has been borne out. Here is a government, sir, that is ignoring the real world costs on real Kiwis. It is ignoring the needs of real households that simply cannot afford another $20 or $30 or $40 a week because they cannot pay the bills. They can't pay their power bills in the winter. They can't pay their rents. They're sharing houses. They're living in garages, sir. And those people don't need a lecture about saving more or spending less or being imprudent, because they are doing the very best that they can just to survive. And if there was ever a statement that shows the government's out of touch. It was our colleague Mr Gilmore who said $20 doesn't matter. Well, it does matter to too many of our constituents, sir. Not to mention the real businesses, sir. The ones that are facing the risk, the cost, the hassle of having to change all their prices and bearing the risk of the GST flow through in the middle of the year, and they are the ones who've been crying out, nay, pleading for this 28-page SOP that protects a few of them from unintended consequences. But if it's good enough, sir, for the government to bring in a remedial SOP that protects financiers from the cost of finance leases, why was it not good enough to protect ratepayers from retrospective increases in rates? Why did it take the Labour opposition to protect those Kiwi householders? And I commend my colleague Stuart Nash for his far-sighted SOP, which is but a small token of the fact that the Labour Party is in touch with Heartland New Zealand, and it's only taken 2 years for the national government to get out of touch, sir. Sir, the same arrogance was shown in the savings component of this bill. The government is supporting an ACT SOP, and so are we, it's okay as far as it goes, that introduces more choice in Kiwisaver and allows individuals to contribute at a higher rate. But isn't it interesting, sir, that in the week the government has finally lurched to set up a committee to advise it on savings, after 9 years in opposition, 2 years in government, 2 budgets, and not a single new idea of its own, in the same week there is no mention of employer contributions, and the Minister of Finance has specifically ruled out any net increase in government contributions because it has to be fiscally neutral. What does that mean, Mr Speaker? What does it mean, New Zealanders? It means that Kiwis will pay for all their own savings. Now, why, sir, would they do that if they're already stretched? The answer is because the government intends to compel them to. The government is not going to provide them with the ability through higher wages or the incentives through a balanced set of contributions by employers and the Crown, nor with better tools like easy, safe savings options. Oh no, the government is simply going to force them. Ah, well, the full flowering of the nanny state, you might say, the granny state. Nanny state meets savings and superannuation. The granny state is apparently here to stay, and New Zealanders all around the country are asking, tell me why I voted for National again. I've already forgotten. Weren't they going to give us everything that we enjoyed under Labour? Weren't they going to maintain social benefits? Weren't they going to catch us up with Australia? And we could have everything we liked under Labour and a nice, smiley man to help us do it. Captain Panic Pants, according to the National Business Review. Captain Panic Pants, a man who has pole-driven his government to a standstill, sir. And now the National Business Review is no friend, it might be said, in particular, of the New Zealand Labour Party. We've come to accept over time the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune from that august journal. But when they, sir, amongst thousands of New Zealand business people are saying the government hasn't just lost its bottle, it's never even found the bottle, what is the plan? What is the game plan that's going to get this government out of the stagnant pool of losing its way? Where is the game plan to bring real jobs, real incomes, real hope to real Kiwis? Well, sir, unfortunately, necessary and appropriate as this bill is, it's clearly not in this bill, because there's nothing here to sweeten savings for Kiwis. There's nothing here to bring relief to higher GST. And the bottom line is that in 2011, 5.9% inflation will eat away any gain people thought they had. This government said, you'll have $20 a week in your pocket when you turn up at Countdown. Yes, but it won't be able to pay for the same trolley load of groceries. You'll be $30 short at the end because the price of everything in it, just like the price of rents, rates, power and everything else, will have gone up by 2.5% on GST, 5.9% inflation, and ordinary Kiwis will be worse off till at least 2014.
That his time has